New Life update and conversation of our ministries and mission. We are, first of all, I just want to thank all of our friends and partners and all of you that have been so instrumental in helping us to be the witness in this community and beyond of peace and reconciliation and what it means to truly be the people of God. This morning, we're going to take about 45 minutes or so to give you some updates. Just want to give a few housekeeping rules very quickly. Make sure that you mute your microphones. We want to also make sure that you know that we're recording and there will be no particular agenda that you'll be able to see. And we also will have an opportunity at the end for Q&A and give you some email information for other questions that may follow. But wanted to make sure that we covered some of the housekeeping pieces. And so we want to open with a word of prayer, and I would just be praying, and our brother Adamino, who's a part of our team, will be praying in Spanish following that. And we will continue to move through the agenda and work with those who are joining us and have other parts to share. So thank you. Thank you for continuing to pray for us. Thank you for continuing to be with us. And thank you for joining us this morning as we talk about the ongoing mission and ministry here at Norristown. Let's have a word of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity of being together in this place as your people. We praise you, Lord, that we have so many friends and partners and family who have continued to walk with us over this past 30 years. We pray, God, that during this very special and challenging time, that we would continue to be a people of faith, a people who look to you to provide, and most of all, a people of witness in a community, in a world that needs to see signs of reconciliation, signs of God, and signs of hope. Thank you, Lord, as we come together this morning for another opportunity to share the witness of mission and ministry in this place that we call Norristown New Life, but in the place that indeed you call your people. We do ask and pray these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amén. Buenos días, hermanos y amigos. A nombre de la Iglesia Menonita Nueva Vida de Norristown, le doy la más cordial bienvenida a este foro. Una vez más, bienvenidos y que Dios les bendiga. Oremos. Padre Celestial, que estás en los cielos, te damos gracias por esta preciosa mañana que tú nos das. Te damos gracias por todos estos hermanos que están apoyándonos en esta mañana. Te pedimos que tú los bendigas, que tú los guardes, Señor, que tú los sigas usando. Permite que en este día podamos tener una agenda fructífera y que todos puedan entender el propósito de la misma. Bendice a tu pueblo una vez más, en el nombre de Cristo Jesús. Amén.
Amen. So Norristown New Life has a long history of partnerships, and some of you are familiar with the beginning of our congregation, starting as the first mission of Franconia Conference in 1917. And so really what we're experiencing today is because of the faithfulness of folk who heard a call 100 years ago and answered that call and have been faithful to engage in that ministry over time. And so what we represent today as a call of people to be the intercultural presence of God in a way that communicates to community, that there can be unity among all people, started with a group of folks who had a vision and who had a sense of call in 1917. We are a congregation that remains committed to being in the city, remains committed to being a place that folk can know that we'll be here with them as the community changes and things, things just move into a different space. And we want to be relevant to what the needs are in the community. We, like many of you, or all of you really, have been impacted by much of what has taken place in the last 6 to 8 months. We've got, of course, the COVID-19 issues. We've got, community unrest. And our response to that, Norristown, is to to shift our mission and ministry to be relevant in this context. Our vision to be the people who are called of God, to talk about unity and intercultural engagement and community support. Our vision hasn't changed, but because of the different time, we do believe that God has called us to shift our mission and ministry. And so, as I said earlier, what we do can only be accomplished through partnerships. And so we've worked with our photo ID clinic, which is part of the Hospitality Center in Norristown New Life Ministry, where we provide identification for folk, and there'll be more conversation about that as we talk about partnerships. But the photo ID clinic with a COVID-19 cautiousness, so to speak, has been something that the community needed now in order for folk to be able to continue to have the identification they needed to access goods and services. We have continued with our community engagement related to peace and justice. And just to be clear, our outreach and work for peace and justice didn't just start now because of what the current realities are. We have been actually engaging in that for some time. And so we have with us this morning a member of our team, Sister Yvonne Platts, who is our Minister of Community Outreach, who's going to talk more about the current context of our work related to engaging with law enforcement, engaging with the judicial system, and the work that we believe is really important during this time of social unrest and all kinds of various suspicions and divisions. She's going to talk about the work that we do as it relates to the community outreach and reconciliation. So, Sister Yvonne, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, but thank you, Pastor Ertell. And as you were just saying, this work didn't just start. I was just reminded as recently of yesterday of running into some young people that this work started particularly for our congregation as I became Minister of Youth and Outreach with our after school programs back 18 years ago in 2002. Looking at the fact that the churches didn't have anything in the evenings in their whole neighborhood, Wednesday night Bible study, Saturdays or anything. So it was a time of bringing young women at the time. I had 12-year-olds to 14-year-olds together to sit down, and we looked at gospel and we have conversations on how we make things applicable to their lives. How would they work situations out? What did God have to say? And making it real in their own lives and in their families. And that journey has continued. It continued to be able to come into the schools where our school administrators had problems and working with our young people. So my work in restorative justice, restorative practice, start beginning at that time. As we know, when our young people get in trouble, there's a thing, the quick response is to punish. But what we have learned about punishment is that it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't help develop our young people. So this whole restorative practice of bringing our young people together, bringing adults together, and sitting down and looking at the problems. So we began working with the school teachers at the alternative school. And from there, it grew into connecting with our police department, youth and law enforcement officers, sitting down and getting to know one another, understanding and hearing what young people felt about law officers. Our young people learning to understand that law officers were people too. Some of them had young people. So opening up people's eyes and trying to dispel some of the myths that were in our community, but also as a nation, as we have grown up with the understandings of community policing and youth. And so what part does our church play in all of that? As Sharon has posted up some pictures, I began taking this to a deeper level upon graduating in 2012 with the master's in restorative practices to pouring into our young people and those who work with adults, who work with our young adults, work with our young people on how to better communicate in ways that would help us to work at the issues that were impacting their community. Some of the other ways and things, the teachings is where we want to make a deeper impact. While we had small groups of pictures that you're seeing now in the past years, it's time now within this current context of the world to teach everybody how to be a peace ambassador. So training up a core group of youngsters and young adults to learn how to teach one another, to communicate with each other is the dream. Working to achieve that dream has placed us in collaborations with other peace building initiatives. The sister that I've worked with, Pillars of Peace, we'll talk about a little bit more later as well, has helped to ground it interculturally with working with our Spanish-speaking families. Has been an added, added resource, an added benefit for our community. So I've been grateful that Norristown New Life, Nueva Vida, Norristown New Life has allowed me to work in such a manner to represent our church, who we are at the table, but hand in hand with families on the streets, interacting with our police officers, interacting with our judicial system, and speaking in the courtrooms with our judges and helping them to see how we can move towards a restorative community instead of a punitive one that currently exists. And working towards the restorative not just works at justice, but it works at healing. It works at healing self. It works at healing relationships with others. It helps build up our families. And when we build up our family relationships, it helps build our community and keeps our community safe. So it is a cycler approach, I guess, a continuing thing that we work with in building up self, building up relationships with one another, holding yourself accountable is what restorative justice is about, with the respect for ourselves, the relationships, and the responsibilities. So that's it in a short nutshell.
One of the things we talked about earlier, we mentioned partnerships, and Sister Yvonne talked about the partnerships, and we've been blessed to be able to engage in so many partnerships that have helped us to be able to reach out far and deep. We have several people with us this morning that'll share, and I'll share some things about some of our partnerships. One of our partnerships, or some of our partnerships, would include Precious Life Learning Center, which is a learning center that operates within our sanctuary areas. And while this conversation this morning is an update about mission and ministry, we're also wanting everyone to be aware that we continue to work in a fundraising phase. I mean, we have a $265,000 fundraising goal that we're looking toward to help to renovate our facilities to better access them for community use and development. And so one of those things that we're doing now is we have this relationship learning center, and they serve, at this point, they serve approximately 80 children over time. Every month they provide over 300 meals. They have a relationship with a location here called Laurel House, which is a place for battered women, and they provide childcare for Laurel House. They also represent, and I'm not going to say protest, I'm going to say they represent a peace presence. They actually marched down to the courthouse and stood very quietly on the steps of the courthouse. And I don't think we have any photographs of that, but actually we had a 12-year-old stand behind the podium and share that diversity is justice. You know, there is no justice without diversity, actually, is what the young person said. So Precious Life Learning Center is engaged. Yvonne talked about being engaged with the school system. Precious Life Learning Center is a resource that helps to work with the school system in various areas when it comes to how young people deal with disagreements and deal with engaging in areas where there tends to be cultural clashes. We've also partnered for many years, and our brother Paul Lichty is with us, with Norristown Hospitality Center, which services homeless and disconnected folk in many ways, people who need a place to go to get their mail, to be resourced for housing or food or jobs. I mean, that is a significant ministry for us. And part of our work with the Photo ID Clinic, which will be touched on a little bit later, is in partnership with the Hospitality Center. The Greater Norristown Area Ministerium is a group of, over 30 congregations in the area that look to Norristown New Life to be helping them to understand what does it mean to be the intercultural, inclusive people of God? What does it mean to work across languages and traditions in such a way that the world sees us as the people of God who have love for each other and aren't separated on Sunday morning necessarily, but are a community that can come together across languages and cultures and traditions. We've been privileged to engage in the last few years with the Religious Leaders Council of Greater Philadelphia. John Hogan is with us. He's going to share a bit about that experience. And we have been blessed to be recognized as what is called a zone of peace or a peace zone congregation. And that has helped us to think about what we do. We are so involved in doing the work of mission and ministry. We don't often stop to look at what we do in particular. And so we thank God because of the witness that others see, that they want to recognize where God is present. And we do, it may sound like a cliche, but we do want to give all the honor and the glory of God, glory to God. Sister Yvonne mentioned about the work that she's done with youth and police officers. We have a partnership with an organization called the Pillars of Peace. And this particular organization works specifically with young people to help them resolve issues of conflict in nonviolent ways. That is so important in our community when we hear about the conflict and some of the challenges that young people face. And, it's one thing to talk with people about being a community of peace and reconciliation, but it's another thing to get involved and to give them resources. Part of what we also do in terms of our partnerships is we reach into family systems. One of the things that COVID has done, and many of us have read the research, is that it's challenged relationships in families. People who are closed in, people who are in situations that they have not become accustomed to. Often there are tensions that arise that they aren't able to deal with the changes and the tension. And some of what Yvonne has done in that work as it relates to this peace and justice issues is actually reach into families, and in those families reach into the lives of young people. But I did want to mention the Pillars of Peace, that is also a partner who continues to work specifically on helping young people to work through conflict resolution. So we have with us our brother John Hogan, who is he's a coordinator of for peace and with the Greater Delaware Valley Religious Leaders Council. So John, I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes and talk about what you've come to share with us this morning about our partnership with you guys. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much for your welcome, and most of all, of course, for the work that you do and the impact that you have on the community. So the Religious Leaders Council of Greater Philadelphia it consists of over 30 religious communities. Their senior leaders. An important member and influential member of that group is Steve Chris, who is on this call, and represents the Mosaic Conference. One of the things that brings this interfaith group of leaders together is their concern for the impact of violence in our region and beyond. And one of the things that all of those leaders share is a fervent hope that people of faith can be mobilized to be peacemakers, to do the kinds of things that Norristown New Life is doing. So towards that end, the Religious Leaders Council started an initiative that is called Zones of Peace. And our process is that we come to get a greater understanding of those communities, congregations, community organizations that are doing exemplary work in peacemaking and in building better communities. And so with the nomination of Reverend Chris, we came to learn about what happens at Norristown New Life. And frankly, we just had our socks knocked off. It was just a terrific experience to learn about what's happening. We decided that that Norristown New Life is not only exemplary, but its story ought to be told. And so part of the way that we did that was to present a banner which can be displayed, which shows that that banner can be, that shows that there is a connection, a recognition by the leaders of our region for what is going on in this community. And I will mention that it was at the encouragement of Pastor Ertell and the Norristown New Life community that we developed a Spanish language version of our banner, and they were the first organization to receive that bilingual expression of our support. We are not we do not have the capacity to support financially, but we do believe that by this recognition and by bringing Pastor Ertell and I believe maybe another person or two from Norristown New Life into a meeting of those senior leaders, we were able to share the example of Norristown New Life with other traditions, with the leaders of those other traditions, so that they are aware of what's going on and can see Norristown New Life as a model. We also think that it's important that our process enables people that are involved in Norristown New Life to stop and think about what they have been doing. They and the other organizations that we recognize are usually so busy being and doing that they lose sight of the larger picture, what one person called the balcony view of what's going on in their organization and the impact that they're having. And so by asking Norristown New Life to tell us their story, and by then being able to summarize that story and put it in our e-newsletter, which reaches thousands of people, and bringing Ertell to the Religious Leaders Council, these are opportunities for Norristown New Life to stop and reflect on the impact that has been made on the larger community, not only Norristown, but beyond. And it's significant. And we think that doing this periodically is a way for an organization, for a congregation, for a community to be encouraged, to get that pat on the back that will motivate them to keep moving forward. Although we understand completely that the primary motivation for Norristown New Life comes from the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And from the community of resource partners that they have inspired and made over the years. So Norristown New Life is one of 83 congregations and organizations that have been officially recognized. We have 7 more congregations and organizations that are in our pipeline to be interviewed, to hear their story and to add. And we know that there are lots more organizations and congregations out there that can be added to this community. So we hope that our partnership provides encouragement and,
Yes.
and ongoing motivation to keep doing. We are so grateful for the example that Norristown New Life provides for other organizations. Just the language that's been used this morning, to be restorative rather than punitive, to be involved with healing rather than justice. That kind of language is really helpful to us as we try to encourage others to be involved in peacemaking. So I want to thank Ertell, and I want to thank all of you who are involved in this enterprise and the leadership of Reverend Chris for the just outstanding witness that is being made for peace and the persistence of effort that has been shown in bringing people together to work together and live together and create peace together across those boundaries that might have resulted in suspicion and fear and hate. And it's just so profound, and the example is so needed, and we will continue to try to share that example across the region. Thanks for this opportunity to be part of your program this morning.
Sure, John, thank you. I mean, you know, for us, as I talked about partnerships, the engagement and involvement with the Religious Leaders Council of Greater Philadelphia caused us to go on pause, actually, and to look at, as you indicated, what it is we're doing. And so I thank you. And getting to know you personally has been a blessing, and to hear you talk with us about what we do has helped us to be able to just be more mindful and cognizant of just how God is using us in this community. You spoke about our friend and brother, Steve Chris, who is the executive minister of what is now Mosaic Conference, previously FMC in Eastern District. And Steve is somewhere on this grid. I don't see him, but we want to give Steve an opportunity to share some words of input and witness this morning. Steve, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. So that means you got too many people on the screen to be able to see everyone, which is good.
All right.
It's good to be with you all this morning, even if we are at 8 a.m. On a Souderton meeting time. So I was thinking that I would, Pastor Ertell asked me to tell a little bit about Norristown's history, and he didn't tell me that John Ruth, who is our conference's key historian, would also be on the call. So I'm actually going to take a different route and allow John to fill in some places that I might have a gap. But I'm going to actually start with the concept of what I believe Nueva Vida Norristown is within our conference community, and to take it from actually yesterday. Pastor Ertell and I were on the phone last night about 9 o'clock, getting ready a little bit for today. And did you look at your video I sent you last night? So
I'm sorry, I was muted. No, I have not. I was in bed.
Yeah. So last night I sent a video that was, we have a new conference staff person, Cindy Angela. It was her first public production. And if you have not seen it yet, there's a little conference promo, but it's a way that Nueva Vida Norristown continues to influence our conference community. But it's a video welcoming persons to the virtual conference assembly this fall in November, and it's trilingual. It moves back and forth between English, Spanish, and Indonesian. It's nothing fancy, but it's really well done. And that is one of the ways I think that Nueva Vida has affected and transformed our conference overall. What I would say in a non-Anabaptist sounding way, in a tradition where I remember reading Why We Do Not Participate in Pugilism, what I have said about Norristown is that Norristown punches above its weight class in its ability to influence. But what I will say in a more biblical term is that Norristown is leaven. It's leaven that has transformed us as a community. And I think that transformation is ongoing. Leaven doesn't give up. Leaven keeps working. Yeast continues to transform. And for us as a conference, Nueva Vida Norristown's commitment to interculturalism has become our commitment. And I think Norristown's witness and persistence enabled us to embrace that as a conference. And I would say that even, especially because of Pastor Ertell's leadership as our executive minister and the time of reconciliation with Eastern District Conference, which had been a split from Franconia Conference, even has led us to our new name of Mosaic. The journey of Norristown has been so affecting, so significant, and the witness has transformed our whole community. The Norristown story has influenced our new communities in South Philly and Allentown, places that have taken models and words and metaphors and coaching really from Norristown's leadership. And I cannot really speak enough about the ways that I think Norristown has influenced us over the long haul. Understanding that we're 100 years into a missional journey together, one of the ways that I talk about Norristown's history is the best of us as historic Mennonite communities was to watch the transformation that was happening close by in Norristown, specifically with the great migration of African Americans north into communities around Philadelphia, and for historic Mennonites to recognize that there was some resonance between persons from the South seeking peace in a new place in Pennsylvania that had been also part of Mennonites' historic story of seeking a place of peace in southeastern Pennsylvania back in colonial times as well. I continue to have the privilege of accompanying the congregation from a little bit of a distance, but specifically around the relationships with Partners for Sacred Spaces, as they actually contacted us at a conference level looking for a key Mennonite partner for their National Fund initiative. And I am really grateful for Partners and for Norristown's opportunities that's happened, and grateful for my colleague Noel, who serves as the primary leadership minister working with Nueva Vida Norristown. And I was going to try to do a little bit of my presentation in Spanish, but I think I still haven't quite had enough coffee yet this morning. But as I have said when I've been at Norristown, my commitment to actually working at being bilingual is further evidence of how Norristown's leadership and Norristown's witness continues to even affect me personally. So I continue to be enthusiastic about Nueva Vida Norristown's witness and work, and really privileged to be able to continue to work at working that yeast into the whole of our growing conference community, the 9,000 of us from California to Florida to Vermont. So it's good to be with you all this morning.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that, brother, and the history that you helped to fill in. You know, it's always risky when you mention folk because you miss someone. But there's so many people on this call who have been instrumental as I talk about partnerships, as I talk about relationships, as I talk about support. There's so many people on this video, several that have been instrumental in helping us to share and hear what it means to be the people of God. We have a brother, Paul Lichty, who was one of the founding pastors. He was the pastor of First Mennonite Church when the three congregations came together in 1990. And I just want to recognize our brother Paul, who's in outer space. Paul, you just want to wave so people see who you are. Yeah, Paul was one of the founding pastors. But there's so many people. We have John Gottschall, who was the previous chair of Franconia Conference, who was helpful to us in helping to move into areas of resourcing in the years that he served. And so, John, you want to wave from your kitchen? There he is. And so it's all about partnerships, brothers and sisters. It's about being a community of God's people that the world can see that we are Christians by our love one for another, and that there's another way to engage in mission and ministry. And so I want to thank all of the people who continue to be a part of our congregation. And you know, as we talk about partners, there's a couple, someone who actually videotaped the presentation they want to share with us. I believe, Sister Sharon, we have the Hospitality Center Director who has a few words to share. And we want to try to pull that up if it's available. Okay, it's not going to happen. Well, I mean, everyone understands that this technology doesn't always do what it wants you to do. It's kind of like when you want your dog to sit and they decide they don't want to. But the Hospitality Center has been an important part of what we do here at Norristown. And I mentioned our brother Paul Lichty as one of the founding pastors of Norristown. He was instrumental in helping to launch that Hospitality Center mission and ministry. And so I'm going to move into having our Sister Sharon talk about the relationship with the Hospitality Center and some of the things that have been shared from the video that we don't have to hear firsthand. So Sharon, you want to say a little bit about working with the Hospitality Center in the most recent days with the COVID and the photo ID work?
Sure. Thank you, Pastor Ertell. As you all know, COVID kind of turned everybody's ministries upside down, and we were trying to figure out what to do, how to safely do a photo ID clinic. In February, we had 58 people show up in 2 hours, and we've been seeing these kind of numbers over the last 2 years. People seeking help to get their photo IDs, social security cards, and birth certificates. So we were trying to figure out, how do we handle a group like that in our facilities and still keep it safe for Precious Life, or for our tenants, for other ministries, and our guests. And it just wasn't going to work. And then the director, Sananda Charles from the Hospitality Center, called me one day. She said, let's take this to the street. So we figured out a way to do the photo ID clinic on the parking lot. And that's the picture I have here for you somewhere. Yeah. This is the parking lot across the street from our church, and the parking lot that serves the Hospitality Center. So that worked, and we're going to do another one in October. I had a call from a woman right as the shutdown was happening. She was homeless. She needed her ID renewed so she could sign a lease on an apartment. And I said, you know, we'll work with you. We'll get back to you in a few weeks, right? As soon as the state offices open again. It took all the way till July before we could help her with that. That's a long time to wait. So all the difficulties that we've experienced with COVID and ministry as usual is nothing compared to what some of our neighbors are dealing with. It's more difficult to get these identity documents, and it's more difficult to use them in the variety of ways where they're needed. So I think this ministry gives people hope, and it's a reminder that God and God's people still care for them. And that's a really important good news that we share with our neighbors at this time.
Amen. Thank you, sister. Appreciate that. Yeah, it is so important for us to think about the context of ministry. You know, as Sister Sharon was sharing about taking the resource for the community to the street. Many of you are familiar with the principle of adaptive leadership. And, you know, there's also this principle of adaptive ministry, you know, where you just have to adapt to the current context and need. And so, yeah, you see by this picture that this is in real time for us, for what we're experiencing. But we believe at Norristown that God always makes a way. We just have been reminded of that over and over. And so I thank you, Sister Sharon, for sharing that. We've talked about where we came from starting 100 years ago plus. We've talked about where we are right now in the current context and reality. And so we want to take some time to round this out, to talk about where it is we're going, what our vision is for our future. As I mentioned earlier, this is to give update and information. We also on a capital campaign where we're raising funds to complete renovations and repair of our building, to make it more suitable for our long-term ministry and mission. Just as a point of interest, we started this out many years ago, over a decade ago, with a $2.5 million capital campaign. Given inflation and some other things that we dealt with, that rolled into $3.5 million. And now we're at a point where we only need, and I say only because it's relative, 1.5 million. So that will allow us to finish up what we're doing and release resources by paying off the mortgage of one of the plazas, which would be one of the buildings that we own. In the model of Franconia Conference, that would give us rental revenue to invest in the community for ministry. This particular conversation today is really looking toward meeting the $265,000 matching grant that Steve mentioned about the Partners for Sacred Spaces, matching grant that we received. So it may be a bit disconnected the way I'm poking it into the conversation, but as long as you hear the numbers and you think about what it is that you can do to contribute and connect is important, but we'll talk more about that. So we talked about where we come from, 100 years of faithfulness, people coming in and with their on their milk routes and doing what they do to make this stuff real for people in the community. We talked about what we're doing now in the current context and reality for the community, And we want to talk about our vision for our future. And I've asked Jim Williams, who is our congregational stewardship chair and also a part of the what we call the Enlarging Our Place in God's World ministry team. That is the team that oversees this capital campaign portion of what our congregation is working toward. And so Jim is going to take us into what we're looking for as we think about the vision for our future. So Brother Jim, you want to unmute and give us
There we go. Can you hear me now, Pastor?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Ertell. Sorry about that. I thought I was already unmuted. But at any rate, we've shared a lot of good information with you this morning. Now I want to take a step back and look at the broader picture. We started this capital campaign roughly 12 years ago with a goal of $3.5 million. To date, we've raised $2.5 million, and the grant, and after the grant, we'll have a balance of approximately $1 million to go yet. Our immediate goal is to raise $265,000 to finish the matching fund for Partners for Sacred Places grant. Even after we finish the matching grant, we will need an additional $158,000 to finish the meeting house projects. We have a balance of approximately $386,000 on our mortgage on the plaza. And it's important to note, by the way, that the plaza pays for itself now, and it does spin off a few dollars to be reinvested in ministry at this point. But the real goal is getting that mortgage paid off. And after that, we'll have some $3,500 a month or about $42,000 a year to invest in various ministries. Our mortgage started at $840,000. So that's a significant, it's over half of that mortgage has been paid already. Other projects include work that needs to be done on the Center for Youth, the parsonage, and the plaza. We know that we're going to need a roof on that in the not too distant future, as well as finishing the kitchenette in just off of the training room in that facility. Both of our large stained glass windows have been restored and now await the final coat of paint to complete the work. We installed, and by the way, I have to share this with everyone. There's a woman that I meet at various church activities, and I can't give you her home congregation off the top of my head. But anyway, she tells me, she says that every time she comes to the traffic light there at Swede and Marshall Street in Norristown, she prays that she gets a red light so that she can just sit there for a few seconds and observe and admire the stained glass windows. And everybody, another contractor in town told me what a great job that the person who restored the windows did, and what an improvement that has made to that section of town. So that was quite impressive, and of course that was needless to say, it warmed the cockles of my heart to hear that. We also we've installed a new furnace in our meeting house, converting from oil to gas and saving money in the process, and that was a major expense item. And everything is in place now for our ADA compliant, handicapped accessible restroom. And we have, well, hopefully the contractor will hold to his prices by the time we get around to actually having the work done. But all the plans, the drawings, everything has been approved. We also, we will also remodel our current restrooms. They're in dire need of updating. So we'll be doing that as well. We also look forward to completing the much needed masonry work. If you look at the stone tower, you can see gaps in the mortar and whatnot. And some of this we actually have to address this year before the winter sets in, because of the thawing and refreezing cycle that the mortar worker, the stone worker goes through. It just causes further deterioration. And so that is a high priority item for us. We also will be getting a chair or stair lift and air conditioning. Someone pointed out that in the 1930s, if you walked into a building in July or August and it was 100 or 110 degrees inside, it was acceptable. But in 2019, it is not acceptable. And of course, if you've ever been in our facilities during those months, you know how hot it can be. And Pastor Ertell mentioned already the Greater Norristown Area Ministerium. They like to have an annual prayer gathering at our facility because we're centrally located there in the center of Norristown. And and of course, we get together. There's always a large crowd, and it generates a lot of heat. So anyway, air conditioning is a must in 2020. And finally, I'd like to say that the capital campaign is not just about restoring an old building or old buildings. Our buildings are just the tools that we need to carry out God's vision and mission in our city. And that's what it's all about. It's all about sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and the gospel to those in a hurting world around us. And that's why we exist. And with that, Pastor Ertell, I'm going to turn it back to you. And anybody else, any other member of the team can highlight anything I might have missed.
Thank you, Jim. Just to be specific about the team that oversees our capital campaign and work, on this call, we have myself as a member of the pastoral team. We have Sister Sharon Williams. We have Sister Yvonne Platts, and we have also Brother Adamino Ortiz, who helped, who opened with prayer in Spanish. We represent the Enlarging Our Place in God's World Oversight and Ministry team. And so we've talked a lot about, as Jim was sharing, as he closed out, about buildings. And this is not really about brick and mortar, but then it is, because it is the brick and mortar that enables us to invest back into community. And so with our building where we have temporary housing for women down the street, or we have our youth center where we rent out a catering service to a local person that was able to start a business, or we have our main sanctuary that is kind of a community gathering place. And just give you a quick story in terms of, from a time standpoint, I'm going to make this really quick. We had a situation as we look at our sanctuary as being kind of the place for community, where a young girl had actually disappeared and the family did not know where she was. They were not able to find her or track her. So I came to the church one evening and I walked in, and there must have been 150 people sitting around on iPads and laptops and all the other electronic stuff that young people have. The good part was I didn't know who many of them were, and none of them really knew me. What these people were doing was they were going into social media to try to track where this young girl was. She ended up being found in Upper Darby, and she was actually rescued. The police went and rescued her from someone she'd met online that had coaxed her into coming into Upper Darby, and which would have ended up into no good. The point being is that Norristown New Life was the place that the community felt was the central gathering point for them to come to our facilities and to work together to find where this young girl was. So, you know, that's just one example of how the community sees our facilities not just as buildings, but as a place that belongs to them, that reaches out and helps to, you know, facilitate quality of life and work toward a value that really the community sees as being a constant. So we've shared a lot of information with you. I want to just stop for a moment and ask if there's any questions that any of you have. We're going to try to answer them as best we can. And if we aren't able to, for time to engage with all of them, we will have some information at the end where you can email or even call to talk further about anything that we've said. Anyone have any particular burning question they'd like to share? You can actually chat and we can work from there.
Remember to unmute your mics.
Oh yeah, if you're gonna speak, please remember to unmute your mic. If you want to chat, you can certainly send the chat and I'll see it as well. Okay, so if there's a question in the meantime as we close out, please feel free to send a chat or contact us at a later point, and we certainly answer them as best we can. So here's how you can contribute and here's how you can connect. What we continue to do at this point is to be deeply engaged in our capital campaign, and we're at a point that we're looking at trying to raise $265,000. There's a couple ways to do that. People can make an immediate contribution that we need to get to a certain point by December of this year where we have contributions and pledges. If people decide they want to pledge, then they can make a pledge which needs to be fulfilled by September 30. And hopefully you can see on your screen. Those of you that are on the phone may not be able to, but hopefully you can see it. So you can either make an immediate contribution that we need to receive by December 31st of this year, or you can make a pledge, and that pledge will not need to be fulfilled until September 30, 2021. And to be clear, that pledge is to help us to fulfill the obligation for the matching grant for this current phase of our capital campaign. So we want to make sure that people are able to give where they can. We have congregations that have committed to looking at some possibilities for us, but you know, as any of you know who have been involved in capital campaigns, there continues to be this drive and move for fundraising. So we thank you all for taking this time. This is really our first partners and friends and associate update that we've tried, given this new reality. It's a bit disconnecting, but you know, I've gotten used to this in a way, because like many of you, I've been doing it so often and for so long, given the COVID. So it feels a lot more comfortable to me, and it feels very comfortable because I'm connected with folk, although I can't see you all, that know us and we know you. So again, thank you, and we would invite any of you, again, with any questions or any input that you want to give us, to contact us. There's a contact information there for our email. You can contact me. My cell phone number is 610-636-1772. My email is ERTELL, M as in Malcolm, W @gmail.com. And of course, you have our church email. So thank you, brothers and sisters. Thank all of you for being with us this morning, for being so faithful, for your prayers, for some of the sweat equity that some of you have done over the years in coming down and being a part of, coming into town and being a part of Norristown. Thank you for your contributions, and just for continuing to help us be the people of God as we listen to the God story and we hear what God is doing in this place we call Nueva Vita, Norristown New Life. God bless you, and good morning. Take care.